So I started at Mir Beach, just outside of San Francisco, and I finished in Ocean City, Maryland. And so it was 120 marathons, 26.2 miles, over the course of 125 days. And so 5 days off, and not even for physical reasons, the days that I took off, it was just that I was speaking at schools. And so, a couple of them were like an hour and a half off the route. And so to get there, to do 4 or 5 talks with students, parents, educators, and also do a marathon, there just wasn't enough hours in the day.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Ryan Snod. It rhymes with odd, and you're listening and watching the Rhymes with Odd podcast. Today, we're jumping back in the booth with another amazing guest. We got the current day Ben Tracy, the most infamous man in the world. Ben, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Ben's like the current day Forrest Gump. That's what I was trying to get out earlier. You are someone that has actually recently, it was last year, right, ran across the United States to raise awareness about child safety online and all the things that are going on with this crazy world. So one, amazing feat. Congratulations on, you're still standing or sitting currently.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I finished almost not even 2 months ago. So still kind of in the recovery, taking it easy phase, trying to get back into working out a little bit.
Sure. No, and we'll talk about the whole process here, but I really think it's an interesting thing because people can be an advocate for a topic or a subject and try to raise awareness about it, but this is a really good way to do it, is just like do some kind of athletic feat that draws a lot of attention, and they're doing it for a reason, where, Forrest just wanted to run. He had a great opportunity to do something. You're using that opportunity of the attention to try to drive home a message here. Yeah,
and of course, I wanted to get this message out to as many people as possible through every avenue. I was speaking at schools along the way, and, TV and radio and newspaper and all those things. But, I also, my job is that I speak to children in schools and their parents. And I want to be relatable and I want to be authentic. And so I also wanted to show kids, look, like you can make a mistake online like I did as a teenager, and you can turn it into something good. You can get past your own mistake. And it's very easy to say that. And I've been doing that in schools all over the country for 7 years. But I also wanted to, to walk the walk, no pun intended, right? And show them that you can move beyond a mistake. And so what I tell people is, if even one kid sees what I've turned my teenage social media mistake into, and they can get through their own thing, whatever it is, then that makes it all worth it to me.
No, I love it. It's kind of interesting too, before we jump in, I think we're connected through Jeremy Lowry. So Jeremy, if you're listening, thanks for connecting us. It's just one of those things, like knowing interesting people, it's always a cool scenario too. So, small world, I guess.
Yeah, I'm glad Jeremy was able to make the connection.
For sure. So I should say we should probably do like your quick intro, like if you introduce yourself to somebody in an elevator or a chatty Uber driver. What do you tell people who you are and what you do?
I just say that I keep kids safe on the internet. And it's the easiest way to explain it. And, that takes a lot of different forms, from in-person speaking engagements and webinars and virtual events and consulting with schools that are trying to remove phones from the educational environment. We help schools develop their tech policy and their AI policy. And this stuff is ever changing and evolving rapidly. So it seems like every month we're doing more and new and different things than we were doing before. But the core mission is, in everything that I do, is to keep kids safe when they're online.
No, I love it. And it's such an important topic. Even if people don't have kids, suicide rates are rising, the depression, the antidepressants that are going on, like gun violence in schools. I think a lot of it is tied back to the mental health crisis in America, especially with the youth. So it's a super important topic, and it's one that definitely needs more attention for sure.
Yeah. And what I tell parents often is the conduit to all of the things that are problematic facing children today, the conduit is social media. So whether it's mental health or the online predators, or even a kid purchasing a vape or a drug or a weapon or making a threat of violence against their school, most of those things have a component that involves a smartphone and or social media.
Sure. No, that's great. So before we get back to current day, because I have so much I want to talk about that, I think it'd help a lot of us and myself to hear kind of your backstory. So let's take me back to like when Ben was a kid. Where'd you grow up and what was kind of your childhood like?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town called Colfax, Illinois, which has a population of about 1,000 people. Public school, K to 12, all in one building. Tiny town. We didn't even have a stoplight in my hometown. We had a Casey's General Store.
Nice.
And
they're headquartered like 10 miles away from here.
Well, so when I was, as an aside, when I was running across the country, I hit the Midwest. The first town that I hit that had a Casey's was this little tiny town called Lake in Kansas, and I ate a shitload of Uncrustables the whole way, and so I was kind of ready for a change. And so we got to Lake in Kansas. I saw the first Casey's, and the two guys that were with me, they were Southerners. They don't know about Casey's, so I was telling them all about it, and I said their pizza's great. And so then right there in that moment, I made the decision: I'm going to eat a slice of Casey's pizza at every Casey's that I run by, all the way across the country. And I mean, there were days where I ran past 4 or 5 Casey's. And so I'd have Casey's at mile 1, at 5, it's 13, 17, 22.
They're everywhere.
And I love it, but it did make running a marathon every day a whole lot more difficult. So anyway, small town, and my parents owned the grocery store in our little town, and I have a twin sister. So we grew up, working in the store and bagging groceries and stocking the shelves and cleaning the meat room and all those different things. There are no child labor laws when it comes to immediate family members. So that was how I grew up. Very much small town, playing all the different sports. Got a scholarship to run track at a small NAIA school in Chicago, and then double majored and did all the things that you're supposed to do to go out in the real world and get a good job.
Sure. No, that's crazy. So you're growing up there. Where'd you go to college?
It was called St. Xavier, a small Catholic college on the south side of Chicago.
Okay. And you said you're like 31, right?
Yep, 31.
I'm 30. And I think we're both in this really unique spot with the technology and the like where the internet was when we were kids. I know I feel like an old geezer saying this, but it's like we have a unique perspective because we grew up as it was coming up,
right?
Where the current age kids don't know a world without social media and the internet and everything like that.
Yeah, a high schooler hasn't lived in a world where there was not an iPhone. And you and I have this, okay, well, we had this childhood without it, and then we got it during our teenage years, kind of in its infancy with MySpace and Facebook and Twitter. And I think our generation made a lot of the first adopter mistakes with social media. And, kids today are making other mistakes, but we truly had no idea what we were doing when we first got onto this stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy situation. So you go to college. At any point in your childhood, did you experience some of the things that you help people with now today? Did you have any I wouldn't say because obviously the internet was kind of early on, but did you experience any of the things that you coach people with today?
No, not particularly. We had situations with, I talk a lot about online predators in school, and we had a teacher at our school who was, messaging and, trying to develop relationships with high school students, and he was arrested for that. And so that always kind of stuck with me. But in terms of like the cyberbullying and, the drugs and some of the things I talk about today, I just because the technology didn't exist, I didn't necessarily have those negative experiences that kids are having today.
Sure. So let's fast forward to probably your biggest aha moment or turning point in your life that got you on the path you're on today, which was getting fired from a job because of your social media use. So talk me through that moment and how that kind of steered your journey through everything.
Yeah. So I graduated from college, and during college, so I ran track and I was doing all the things, during college, and I started working on political campaigns in college and was doing fairly well with that. And I was going to go to law school originally. I took the LSAT and that was kind of the path I was planning. And then I met a lot of lawyers through politics many politicians are attorneys. And almost all of them said, unless you really love the law, you may want to reconsider law school. And some of them, just even getting to know them, they were not particularly happy people. And I don't know if it was the law or the politics or some combination of both of those things. So I was kind of reconsidering that anyway. And a guy I knew asked me to run his campaign for state senate in Illinois, and did well with that and kind of moved up the ranks quickly. And so then in 2017, about a year after, I've been out of college about a year, I got an opportunity to interview for a job with the former governor in Illinois, got the job, and on my first day got fired from the job because of a few inappropriate social media posts that I had made as a teenager 5 years before, when I first got onto social media in like 2012. And, I had like 5,000 tweets on my Twitter account, and they went back and found 4 or 5 that were inappropriate jokes, all tweeted, and this is not excusing him, but this is just a reality of what it was, jokes tweeted back at friends. And so I was actually in the car with the governor as this all came to be. I mean, he's sitting right next to me. And so I get fired while in the car with him 2 hours away from home. And, actually what had happened was, and I won't get into all the politics, but he had made some changes with his staff, fired some previous staff he had and brought in new people. And I was part of the new crew of people. And so the people he fired, he came from the private equity world, and, he was a billionaire, very close to it. And so he had purchased business. His career was they had purchased businesses, and they had fired, laid people off. And in that world, you never heard from those people again. Well, that's not how politics works. So the people he had fired when I was getting brought in, they were the people who had ran his campaign and made him the governor. They had ran the government for the first 2.5 years he'd been governor, and had really, frankly, helped him. They'd saved him from himself in a lot of ways. They said, these are where the landmines are, and, you're new to this. We are, experienced political people. And so he fired those people, and they are all capable political operatives, political assassins. It's just what they are. And so anybody who got brought in was by default a target. And so they knew, some of the people knew who I was from the the campaigns, and it's a small circle of people.
So they just came for you then.
Yeah. So they went through, they found 4 or 5 inappropriate posts, created a fake Twitter account, completely anonymous, start, taking these screenshots and tagging the Illinois political reporters who, of course, ran with it and used that as their source, was an anonymous Twitter account. And, the hypocrisy of many of them have cleansed themselves now, but some of the very reporters had their own social media history wasn't exactly.
Especially if they fall in the same age gap that we are, where like when Twitter first came out, and you're posting like
complete free for all.
Yeah. Like when you're posting things as a 16, 17-year-old, like you're not thinking, I'm going to be in politics in 10 years from now, and this could really blow up in my face,
Yeah. And I at least for me, like none of it was like malicious or ill-intended. It's like, you make a joke at your friend, and it's not like you're being hateful with it. It's like you're a teenager. And so, I think that context is actually important. And so, it was just a complete whirlwind. It was front page Chicago News. Like I said, I was in the car with the governor when I got fired, and then it's like, my God, what do I do now? What job can I get after this? So
Sure. It brings up a story that I had. Have you ever heard of Carson King?
Yeah, sure have.
Okay.
I actually shared his story last night when I was speaking to a group of parents here in Iowa.
Okay. Well, we have him on the docket for the podcast here, so he'll be coming on.
You do.
He'll be sitting in your seat, which is kind of cool.
That's very cool.
Same thing, man. The whole play out of that story. It's like the fact that people were looking to tear him down when he's just trying to raise money for kids with cancer. Like, why would he be a target for someone? And just how that all played out was just so beyond me.
Well, yeah, and I don't remember all of the details, but I think he raised over $1 million, and it was like $1 million minus one case of Busch Light was going to a children's hospital, I think, in here in Iowa. And they wrote this nice article, the Des Moines Register newspaper, about this wonderful deed he'd done, and it was a wonderful deed that he'd done. But the last paragraph said, "Oh, look at his Twitter account from when he was 16," and everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people were, Anheuser-Busch, whoever it was who'd partnered with him, they dropped their sponsorship, and that becomes the story, is not this wonderful deed he'd done, but this joke that he made on Twitter years before when he was a teenager. And then, the story that not everyone knows is the reporter from the Des Moines Register newspaper actually got fired because somebody was like, wait a second, you look through Carson King. Let's look through what you're posting. And it was worse than anything Carson King posted. Came full circle. That guy gets fired. And so, I had a very similar experience. People sent me the post, frankly, of some of these reporters who'd written these articles about me. And, my thought was, of course, Carson King wasn't the one driving that, but I had those posts and I still have them, right? Even 8 years later, and most of them have cleansed themselves since then. But I thought, well, then I'm as bad as them. I could have posted those posts. I could have got them fired from their jobs, no doubt about it. But I decided to try and take a different path and, share my experience and my story, and hopefully something positive would come of it. And it certainly has. Sure.
So let's jump to that point in the story where, you're kind of going around sharing about this, and what was that process like for you?
Yeah. So pretty quickly after I got fired, I was seeing other people posting things very similar to what I had posted. I was 23 years old. And so I was like, man, somebody should be talking about this, that this could cost you a job, a scholarship, what have you. And so I knew that I wanted to talk about it, but I wasn't ready right away. So probably, maybe a year after it happened, I reached out to my college track coach. I was like, hey, man, I think I could share this story. Would you get the track team in there? And these are my friends. I mean, I'd been the captain of the track team just, a year or two before that. And so I went in, I spoke to the track team, and the athletic director sat in on it. He's like, why don't you come back and talk to the whole athletic department? And that's kind of how it got started, was speaking to college athletes. And then some high schools started to want it. And that's what it was all about, was the digital footprint, was the jobs and the scholarships and all of that. And then I started going into these high schools. And these kids are coming up to me, and they're literally pulling their phone out of their pocket, putting it in my face, and saying, okay, I understand the digital footprint. I understand your experience, your story, all that. But will you help me with this? Showing me their phone. And it was the cyberbullying. It was these predators that were sending them messages. It was high school girls especially telling me, and this is 2018, so Instagram was the big one at the time. The more time I spend on this app, Instagram, the worse I feel about myself. I have this body image issue, and I think it's somehow related to the amount of time and the content that I'm consuming. And I realized, I thought the worst thing that could happen was getting fired from a job, getting your picture on the front page of the Chicago newspaper. And I quickly realized that's actually far from the worst thing. And it's not happening to 23-year-olds. It's happening to 13-year-olds. And so it's like somebody should do something about this. So that's what I've tried to do.
Sure. So you made a pivot from politics, from law, and this is your living, right? You go around and you educate people, you spread awareness about this topic and all that stuff. Yep. How did this come about in terms of making the conscious decision, like, I'm going to pursue this? Because you could have easily been like, oh man, that sucks, and then just go on with your life. Like, oh, I was talking about this other topic, like that issue also sounds bad. But at what point did you realize, like, I need to do something about this, and I'm going to take responsibility to help educate on this?
It was really, when I first started doing it, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know that you could make a living speaking in the first place. So it was just, hey, somebody, I want to share this story a little bit. It'd be good for some people. And it'd probably be, selfishly, it's probably good for me to share this, right? This experience that I've had. And then once I started hearing these kids' stories, that was the motivation to keep doing it, because at first it's like, well, maybe, once I've done this, maybe I could go back into politics or get a different job or, kind of make good on the mistake that I'd made. And then you hear these kids' stories and it's like, man, somebody has to do something about this. And, I think I was unique in that I could speak publicly, okay, and I was comfortable doing that. And I was younger than their parents, which I think is important when it comes to phones, because if I was 50 years old, they're looking at me like, dude, you're older than my dad. What do you know? And so the personal experience, the age, the kind of motivated it. And I never have had an issue with kids paying attention. I mean, they are locked in. It's like you could hear a pin drop every time I do a speech. And so I could tell it was working. I was getting feedback from the kids and messages afterwards and genuine thank you for talking about these issues. So that's really what's continued to motivate me.
Sure. That's crazy. So you're doing speaking, helping consult, that type of thing. Where have you gone around the country to help educate these people?
Just about everywhere at this point. I think I've done over 500 schools, almost every state, every type of school, public school, private, parochial, you name it, elementary, middle school, high school, law enforcement groups, mental health organizations, teacher conferences, you name it. We've pretty much done it at this point.
Sure. And the marketer in me is like, at what point have you thought about doing like an online program or a book, writing a book? Because then you can not have to be in the plane like 300 days out of the year if you needed to.
By the time, I don't know when this podcast comes out.
Like 3 months. You were 3 months out for this one.
By the time this podcast comes out, there will be a parent education subscription model.
Nice.
That is out. And by next school year, there will be a student curriculum as well, working on a book. And then there's going to be a documentary about the whole run as well. So
sure.
All of those things are happening because, I do think, I don't know that I can do this forever in terms of being as relatable as I would want to be. Certainly I could talk to parents and teachers and stuff, but
you're like 90 years old, like
back in my day when Twitter was around, before it was X, and Elon had people living in Mars.
Like no one's going to want to listen to you at that point.
Dude, exactly. And, at some point it's like, I'm single, no kids, no real commitments right now. I can go anywhere. I can do whatever I want. Who knows? But it probably won't be that way forever. And so then, I'm just starting to think longer term.
Sure. So, and that's what brings you to Iowa now. So you live in Nashville currently.
Yep.
That sounds like you've been just all over the place though. Like, has there been most memorable place that you've been to?
Oh man. Well, there were some memorable places during the run. As far as traveling, speaking wise, I mean, I've kind of been all over. It's hard to, I like different places for different reasons. And there are cities that I like. I really find myself liking the medium-sized cities. So Chattanooga, Tennessee, Des Moines. I mean, Des Moines is like a very underrated city in my opinion. I'm not saying that just because I'm in Des Moines. I actually do feel that way. I've spent, I've been up here several times. So those are the kind of the cities that I like. And then schools. I mean, I've done all, every type of religious denomination and public schools and, you name it. And some of them I like because they've got a great administrator or something like that. But, but some of them, I mean, I've done so many that it also kind of runs together at this point too. So I do really enjoy there are some Catholic schools in Miami that are primarily Cuban. And so there's one in particular, it's called Belen. The church was started in Cuba, I think, and they they came to Miami, I want to say in the 60s, when I think, around the time and I'm probably butchering the details a little bit, but when Castro took over in Cuba. And so, I actually think Marco Rubio, the new Secretary of State, I'm pretty sure his kids go there or went there. And they're very much pro-America, pro-capitalism. They love this country, and they're just wonderful people. And so that's the one that comes to mind of just the, you get to know them and their core beliefs and why they believe what they believe, why they came to this country, and they're so grateful to be here. Mm-hmm. And I think so many of us, we take that for granted. And so, yeah, that's one that pops into my head.
That's great. I think the natural way this conversation's going, we can kind of shift to the run. Like you ran across the country. Like you're one of less than like 400 people that's ever done that. You went through 10 pairs of shoes, like spent hundreds of days running marathons daily. Like walk me through why you decided to put your body and your mind through one of the, probably the hardest thing you'll ever physically do in your life.
Yeah. So I was running.
It sounds like Forrest Gump. I'm sorry, I was running.
Yeah, I know.
I just felt like running one day.
At the end, I finished, and I was like, we did this little gathering afterwards, and I was telling people the Forrest Gump thing. I'm pretty tired. I think I'll go home now.
I was waiting for you to just have a huge beard and then like a Bass Pro hat.
I got a lot of that. Everybody's like, "Why are you shaving? Why are you shaving? You got to let everything grow out." But it was in the I was spent time in the desert, and it was so hot. And but anyway, to answer your question, I was doing some marathons and ultra marathons, and I was doing okay with those, and doing fairly well. And then I was speaking, and it was like, maybe there's a way to put these two things together. And so as I was looking at different things, like maybe I run Route 66, and then then I was like, it'd be really cool to run across the country, but I didn't know anything about it. So then I start researching how many people have done it and logistically how it would all work. And I'll be honest, for like the first 3 months that it was in my head and I was starting to kind of put the plans together, I didn't tell anybody because it seemed so crazy that any reasonable person would be like, don't do that. It's dangerous. And I heard all that, a million different reasons why not to do it. And then it was like, you know what? I'm doing it. Like, I think I can do this physically. And then it became all about the logistics and finding a crew to go with me and, acquiring a motorhome that we would need and sponsors and all those different things. But it was really just a way of putting my professional mission and my, I call it personal passion of running. Just, how do we put those things together and do something that really cool and hopefully will have an impact.
So where did you start? How long did it take? Walk me through some of the logistics of how you pulled this off.
Yeah, so I started at Mir Beach, just outside of San Francisco, and I finished in Ocean City, Maryland. And so it was 120 marathons, 26.2 miles, over the course of 125 days. And so 5 days off, and not even for physical reasons, the days that I took off, it was just that I was speaking at schools. And so, a couple of them were like an hour and a half off the route. And so to get there, to do 4 or 5 talks with students, parents, educators, and also do a marathon, there just wasn't enough hours in the day. So yeah, it ended up being 125 days total. And I mean, literally I ran every single step across the country. I would run the 26.2. The crew would throw me a can of spray paint. I'd spray paint the shoulder. We'd drop a pin off our phone, go stay in a campground, and then come back the next day and do it all over again.
That's crazy. You didn't even walk one step of it. You were running.
I walked on day 3. I walked 2/3 of a mile, maybe.
Okay.
Other than that, I was running the whole way.
That's crazy.
No, I wasn't running 5-minute miles. It was like, I think the average pace when it was all said and done was like 10:45 or something like that.
Sure.
But I never had a marathon that was longer than 5 hours. I think my slowest one was like 4:52, 4:55, something like that. So, and my fastest one was actually the last one, the very last day. I ran a 4:17. So I figured I don't have to do it again. I might as well send it.
Sure. So did you, after you got, I mean, this is a huge athletic feat to even accomplish this. At what point in this journey were you like, hell no, I'm not doing this? I figure like, I've read so many books like David Goggins talking about some of his long ones that he's done. And like, you just get to that point where you're like halfway and you're like, I could just quit right now and nobody would even know. Like you said, I'm not going to tell anybody. Like I'll just like walk off into the desert and take a nap. Like what was that like for you and what was the hardest point?
Yeah, I think the halfway point was when it was like, man, I've ran halfway across the country, but I still got to run halfway. And it was this town, Dodge City, Kansas. That was the halfway point. And so I didn't take any days off for the first 60 days. So I ran 60 right back to back to back. And through the Rockies, through the desert. And that's why I ran actually west to east instead of east to west. Most people who do this and fail either in the desert or in the Rockies. So my thought was, well, hell, if I'm going to fail, I'd rather fail 3 weeks into this than 3 months in, you know what I mean? But the halfway point was this town, Dodge City, Kansas. We're sitting there, I'd run 60 in a row, and it was my birthday. And it's like, man, this is what I'm doing for my birthday is, in this town. And it's like, man, I gotta do that all over again. And knowing it was getting cold. And I think that was probably the hardest time mentally. But on the back of our RV, we had 11 names of children along my route who tragically died from something social media related. And so I made a decision when I decided that I was going to do that I would never quit. Something could happen. I could have got hit by a car or bit by a rattlesnake, but I was never going to quit just because it got hard. Because I did feel a lot of pressure, especially with these parents who are calling me and texting me every single day with encouragement. And I felt a lot of pressure to honor their child properly. And so, I made that decision is no matter how hard it got, I wouldn't quit.
That's fantastic. It's a lot of people think you'd be kind of cuckoo for doing it, like you're crazy or like off your rocker. But I mean, by the time you got at least halfway through the country, what was kind of the media attention like or the buzz around it? Because when you start like, woo, and it's like a cross country meet, you shoot the gun and everybody cheers and then you're gone from view. And then people like, I just assume wander around. Like I've never been to a cross country meet, but that's probably what I assume happens. Like, was that kind of your experience with your run across the country?
Yeah. I was doing these local media and stuff along the way. And, half the time you're like, does anybody even watch this stuff or read it? And, I told you this off camera, like if I had to do it over again, I probably would have done more things like this, longer form conversations with, interesting people and, where you can really put some context and nuance around your mission and your thoughts. So we did and we were doing social media along the way. But to your point, there was like the start. We did this kickoff event in my little hometown and everybody was there and we started the run. And first week, everybody's like, yeah. And then like the last 2 weeks, people were like, okay, yeah, he's going to make it. We're excited again. But then the 13 weeks in between there were times it's like, man, does anybody even know we're doing this? So it was definitely a big splash at the beginning, and of course a lot of attention at the end. And I know there were people, even friends of mine, who had made bets against me, and so that was enjoyable. But it was quite a journey, and I mean I don't think it's still totally set in that I actually did it. Even 2 months later, it's like, wow, sometimes I'll just go into my camera roll on my phone and look through the photos like, wow, it seems like so long ago and it really wasn't. And, from like a mental side, that like one part of me always knew I would make it. And then there was this other part, like equal on the other side of that was like, there's no way I'll ever actually do this, So is that kind of holding those two thoughts simultaneously for 125 days straight was difficult.
Sure. Well, I can imagine just the stress and pain on your joints and your feet and your knees and stuff like that. Did you have to get like work done every day, every night to try to release some tension in your body and be able to like make your hips move that much? Because your body's probably like, heck, dude, stop, Ben. Like, I'm just going to start shutting down,
Yeah. I did the what do you call them? The Therabody leg sleeves for about 90 minutes every night. And then I would do like a 10 to 15 minute like stretching yoga routine. I was eating about 6,500 calories a day, hydrating, doing all of that. So that was kind of the ritual. And so the days that I took off was the worst that I felt. And when I finished and got back home to Nashville, that was by far the worst because, everything kind of caught up to me at one time. So, the daily routine was run the marathon, usually speak at a school or do media or, what have you. And then go back, do the leg sleeves for an hour and a half and go to bed.
And crash.
Yeah. I've never slept better in my life. I'll say that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. There's nothing else to do besides just crash, So that's crazy. So you mentioned like you're doing this documentary. I saw some of the clips on Instagram and fantastically done. Like whoever your crew was that was helping you put that together, it looked great.
Yeah. Thank you.
was the vision initially did the film crew follow you the entire way, or what was the documentary process like to get this filmed?
Yeah, so I had a video guy. His name's Christian Hall, great guy, very good. I mean, you've seen the videos. He's very good at his craft. And then we had another guy named Seth. Seth was the driver and the cook, and he took some photos himself. But really his job was the logistics, and Christian's job was the documenting. So he was doing, you know way more about this than I do, but different cameras and, shooting in high quality. And, he's doing stuff off his iPhone, more like day-to-day Instagram stories and all that. But the documentary he has all in I don't think he's got like 10 or 12 hard drives that he filled up through this. And I haven't even seen all the content, to be honest with you. And a lot of it I probably never will because, there's just so much of it. So we're in that process of putting it all together and even really figuring out, like, what is this documentary about? Is it about running across the country? Is it about internet safety? Is it about the families I honored? Is it about cancel culture and overcoming that, or like some combination of all those things? But I will say, even aside from the high quality work, I had the two right guys with me, and I don't know if I would have made it if I didn't have either one of them, or if I had somebody different. They did so many things that weren't in their job description. Christian, the video guy, that was his role, was take pictures and videos. But he was also like dumping the shit off the RV, and he was, cleaning and doing dishes, and, so many little things those guys did that probably I didn't even know all the things they were doing, and certainly, the general public wouldn't. So I do feel very lucky and grateful to have had those two with me, because while it was me doing the running, it was a team effort, and they were making sure that I could focus just on running and speaking and getting this message out.
I'd be curious too, just on the marketing side, like would you guys put together a final doc and then try to pitch it to a network, or would you do the opposite and try to like go to a Netflix or a Hulu and say, hey, we filmed this already, production's already done, like how much would you pay for this?
That's a conversation that we are having right now, and trying to get connected with people who can give us insight and thought, and make the connections that we would need on that. Either way we were to do it, but
sure.
Yeah, that decision hasn't been finalized yet.
I do know three filmmakers and DPs that have made docs that have gotten on the major networks. So after this time, I'll connect you with some of them.
Yeah,
there's
that'd be great.
There's an East Coast broker and a West Coast broker that they know all the C-suite people. So if I can get you their information, they do take a cut, but at least you could get a conversation.
That'd be awesome. I'd appreciate that.
Happy to connect the dots. But no, I think it's just it's a crazy story, but also just raising the awareness about it, I think, is such an important piece, because you could have done this in the dark, so to speak, like not had any support staff. I feel like it's very hard to do with you in like a backpack or something. Like, holy cow.
People have done it that way, and there's like, I guess I did it in the more bougie way. If there's a bougie way to run across the country, I mean, you're still living in an RV. It's like 3 grown men in a moving 200-foot studio apartment, essentially what it is. I don't know that would be bougie, but some of the people are, they're like doing the shopping cart, or, some sort of thing, that trailer behind, that's like connected to their waist or whatever, with no fanfare at all. Very few of them do social media. I met this one guy. He was outside, where was it? Vincennes, Indiana. I was getting my hair cut, and the guy cutting my hair is like, yeah, there's some other guy who came through. He was walking across the country. He met some lady here in Vincennes, and he just quit. He did. And then he goes, and then they broke up or whatever, and this guy got into drugs or whatever it was, and he's like, anyway, he lives at the Forest Preserve outside of town. So when you run by there, if you go look for this guy back behind the bathroom, he was walking across the country and never made it.
Dude, it's like the runners of Ghost Pass, like this the highway of lost dreams. That sucks.
Yeah.
Did you talk to him? You're like, hey,
I looked for him. I couldn't find the guy out there, but he said he was there. So I don't know.
What a crazy story if he'd have like married that lady and like, yeah, how'd you and grandma meet? Well, walking across the country and I saw a pretty lady and I gave up on my dream to run across country.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I don't know what he was looking for, but I can tell you from my own experience, I didn't see a pretty lady almost the entire way. I live in Nashville. I said, man, I go walk and get a cup of coffee in the morning and see more pretty ladies than I did that entire journey across Highway 50.
Sure. Yeah, Nash Vegas, baby. That's the place to go. Bachelor in paradise, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
No, I think that's a crazy journey, and I think the fact that you documented it, one, just for your own benefit, but also two, to like motivate other people and spread awareness. I think it's super cool. We'll take a break now. We'll do the lightning round. So
Perfect.
haven't briefed you on the questions. We'll just ask some random questions and kind of lighten it up a little bit. So
I love it.
We'll start with the dark, deep, serious stuff and make it more fun. But I know you've done a lot of research on the effects of social media and how it pertains to high school mental health. Do you know the percentage of high school students that have like, what would I say, had suicide ideation?
I don't know the number, a percentage of suicidal ideation. The research that I go back to a lot is that the Department of Health and Human Services came out with this report that showed kids who are spending more than 3 hours a day on social media apps are twice as likely to experience anxiety and depression as those spending less than 3 hours a day. But yet the average is 4.8 hours a day.
Sure.
Which is, of course, a massive problem. So that's the stat that I often reference. But yeah, there have been massive increases in suicide as well as suicidal ideation amongst children.
I know. Just if you could throw a number, what do you think percentage-wise of like boys and girls, anyone at high school age, what percent do you think would have had or have reported having suicide ideation?
If I had to put a number on it, I would say at least 20%.
Yeah, 22%. That's pretty well researched there, which is just nuts to think about that like just about 1/4, like 1 out of 4. And that's just really sad. And it's like the thing about it too that I think, and this is a mental health issue with most of the country right now, is like, in my own personal opinion, social media is a big part of it, but also like we've gone through like now like 2 or 3 generations where like we haven't had a major conflict. Most people have running water, like your 4 main needs are met. And then people just kind of get like in this place of like, I don't know what to worry about. And then they start almost like seeking out cortisol inducing like stress, or they're just comfortable enough where they're like looking for something. And I feel like those things can like find you. It's like idle hands,
Yeah. What's the saying? An idle mind is the devil's workshop or something like that. I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So moving on here, you talked about running across the country. Do you know the number of miles it takes to go from east to west across on average?
It's got to be about 3,000. I mean, the route that I took was 3,125 total.
Okay.
But, depending on, some people take slightly different routes, but I think all of them, any way you slice it, is between 2,900 and 3,100, something like that.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, the shortest one was 2,800. If you go the most direct, you'd probably be running through the unpaved roads of a desert or something. Yeah. But yeah, it's about 3,000. So you win that one. Ding, ding. So,
nice.
Best meal that you had on the road?
Oh, man, that's a great question. We had a lot of Mexican. Oh, man. There were many more bad ones than there were good ones in a lot of these little towns.
I could imagine Mexican though. Oh my gosh, you'd be like running and just have like refried beans, bad belly gut.
Yeah, my stomach is indestructible at this point. To be totally honest with you, the
breakfast pizza and
Casey's breakfast pizza.
Mexican?
Yeah,
oh man,
it wasn't good. Honestly, the best meals were the ones that the driver Seth cooked. I mean, the guy is just a heck of a cook. He's very good at making pasta, and that was my favorite meals that I had were when we would just go back to the campground and he'd whip something up on the little stove in the RV.
Very cool. Did you have like an easy chair or something you'd sit in, like a big comfortable?
No, there wasn't enough room for that. So early on, we had those like zero gravity chairs that I would sit outside sometimes at night, and we'd have a little fire or whatever. But then it got cold, and so I'd usually just go lay in bed and put those leg sleeves on. Interesting.
Okay, so now we talked about Forrest Gump enough. I'm a huge movie nut. It's a you go, I go on Forrest Gump movie quotes.
Oh man, you don't want me on this. I I'm not a movie guy because I just can't sit still long enough.
Have you at least watched the whole movie before?
I've watched it, but honestly, it's probably been 5 years. I had this plan that I was going to watch it like during the run, and we were going to make some memes to incorporate, like, you know, Forrest Gump sitting on the bench or whatever. We were going to do some of that, and you know what? We never got around to it. And you know, it was hard from like and you probably understand this probably better than I would, but like we were trying to do so many different things with the running and documenting eating and presentations and then the interviews that I was doing with these families, that it was kind of all over the map. And so some of the things that we wanted to do, just, you know, I would much rather tell a parent's story than make like a Forrest Gump meme. But, you know, I think there were some of those things just kind of fell by the wayside. But yeah, as far as quotes, I may not be your guy on the.
Can you maybe like can you give me 3 Forrest Gump quotes?
I mean, I know like the life's like a box of chocolates. We got that. Okay. We got the one that I referenced earlier. I'm pretty tired. I think I'll go home now. Man, give me the third one. Give me what's a third one?
There'd be like the drill sergeant says, "Gump, why'd you assemble that gun so quickly?" And he's like, "Because you told me to, drill sergeant. You're a goddamn genius, Gump." Like just stuff like that.
Yeah, you know what? Now that we're talking about this, I need to go back and watch it,
okay.
And because
we got
plenty of content, and so it's not too late for the Forrest Gump memes. I don't think.
Yeah, Lieutenant Dan, ice cream.
Yeah,
that's a good one. Oh man! I probably had me about 14 Dr. Peppers. That's another one.
Now I know all these. Now that you're saying them. Yeah.
Yep. Oh man, I'm gonna think of a couple of those, like the kids ones too, when they were kids, from the kids scenes.
Yeah.
The things that Jenny would say to him, they're like, everything's like super quotable, I would say. Or Bubba, when him and Bubba are talking.
Yeah.
I gotta find Bubba. He runs back into an active war zone, like stuff like that. It's great.
Speaking of Bubba, there's a great restaurant in Des Moines called Bubba.
Oh,
I
yeah.
went to a couple times.
It's a good spot.
It's a very good spot. And I think the same group there's an Italian restaurant right up the block from there. I forget the name of it.
Centro?
Yes.
Yep.
Also very good.
Yep.
There's some good spots in Des Moines.
Yeah, there's some really good sit-down spots. Like I've had, Bubba's good. They have like Cajun food. I was just in Oklahoma City last week, and I had Pearl Restaurant Co. is what it's called. And they have a big sign that says like Cajun oysters or whatever. But I went and got like this Cajun ribeye, and it's in like the grits. There's like shrimp broil, and then like blueberry cobbler, and like a really good salad. And I was like doing a day in the life video of like my trip while I was there.
Yeah, I saw that.
But I ate it like 11 o'clock at night, and I was like, I felt like I was drunk because I'm just like so tired.
Yeah.
I'm like out of it. And like I was editing this video, and like half the stuff I said didn't even make sense. I'm sure you know from like when you're like fully blown exhausted. I was just like, and this is good, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what am I saying? I'm like so tired, you know, it's just kind of a weird feeling. So.
Yeah, that's what I told those guys. I was like, I think I forgot how to talk halfway through this run across the country. But what was the place called? Pearl?
Pearl, yeah.
Okay.
So it's downtown Oklahoma City. It's like right by the Thunder, the basketball stadium. So.
Yeah, well, I'm going down there for a talk next month, so I'm going to check that out.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to send you what I got. It was really good. So, well, that was, I think, pretty good lighting round. You got most of them right. So
thank you.
And probably you'll have to watch Forrest Gump on the plane home. I know my internet
safety stats better than I know my Forrest Gump quotes.
That's fair. That's fair. I probably watched Forrest Gump in a stupid amount of time. So one of our we had a government class, and one of our final projects was to script Forrest Gump 2. Because Forrest Gump 1 is like a recap of all of recent U.S. history, you know, the Watergate scandal and Vietnam and whatever. So we had to write we had to write a song to we didn't start the fire, but we had to use current stuff. So instead of like, you know, Ronald Reagan, we'd be like Obama iPhones, you know, Kids Chronically, Depressed Online, or something, like try to make it make sense.
Yeah.
So we had to write that song, and then we had to script a movie script for Forrest Gump 2.
Interesting.
And mine was, I'm trying to remember, it was like the kid that was his son in the movie was the kid from Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis, where he sees dead people. He's like, I see dead people.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I just like pictured him, and he was like an Air Force pilot, and then he like ran into Tom Cruise. Like it kind of went sideways really quick. I got a B+ on it, I think. So
not bad.
It was like 15 years ago.
I think, I mean, if there's a sequel, you could make that on like one every year for like the last 5 years. So much history's happened. It feels like in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I saw an interview once with Tom Hanks, and he had said that they had like scripted and almost had planned out like a Forrest Gump 2, but he would just like, it's one of those classics. I just want to leave it. I don't want to like try to,
Sometimes it's better that way, I think.
Yeah, there's some that they do sequels, and it's like, no, what are you doing? So anyway, okay, so we've come full circle here. One of my biggest questions I had for you when I was researching for this interview was, what's the biggest lesson you learned about yourself when you were on the road? I mean, there's so many things that happen. I'm just really curious, like, what did you learn about yourself, or what did you discover about yourself on the road?
I think you're capable of so much more than what you think. And when you give yourself no option out, then you're obligated to finish it. And so, it was like, I think, if I was trying to think of, oh my gosh, I have to run 3,100 miles every day, that would have been really hard, if not impossible. But it was just, I just have to run a marathon today. And then tomorrow I wake up and tell myself the same thing. And those daily wins became a run across the country. And so I think that, most people are probably living far below what they're actually capable of. And I also think there's no such thing as a perfect plan. Like, we had a plan, but the main plan was just keep going forward, just keep running every day. I think a lot of people get so caught up on this plan has to be perfect, and they get this, like, what do you call it? Like a paralysis, paralysis by analysis. They just overthink everything. I mean, I've met so many people that are like, I want to start a business. I want to run a marathon. I want to do this. I want to do that. It's like, do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Go outside, run a mile today. Go to the Secretary of State's website, set up your LLC. Like, it's not that hard to do, but it's like, you don't have to have everything figured out to take that first step, and the other steps will, they'll show themselves when it's time, when you get there. So I think it was that. And I just think since I finished, I'm less bothered by little things that maybe before would have thrown off my day, or, I would have been upset about something for an hour. Now I think about it for 2 seconds, and then I move on from it. So, I'm still kind of reflecting on the journey and the takeaways, and I'm really starting to write and journal and things like that. And so I think I'm still kind of working through that, the takeaways from it. But yeah, certainly we're just all capable of so much more than we think, because I'm not an elite runner. Like, I don't think I could go out right now and qualify for the Boston Marathon, which is like a 3-hour marathon. I could probably come close, but it would be very hard for me. I'm not, I don't have long legs. I don't really look like a runner. I was a sprinter in college. I swore against distance running, and I ran across the country. And so, if you ask my college track coach, hey, there's 50 guys on the team, who's the last guy that would ever run across the country? He would have picked me.
Sure. Well, it's like you said, this rumination process. I'm sure even like the week after, I'm sure you took a good break, a well-deserved break after. When was the first time you like ran again? Or have you still not ran in the last 2 months?
I haven't ran much. I ran 5 miles on the treadmill in Chicago a couple days ago. I bet I haven't ran a whole marathon total since I finished, to be honest.
Well, it's like dead of winter. I mean, if you're listening to this in 3 months, there's like a foot of snow on the ground outside. It's probably not a very fun place to run outside. So
right, exactly. I've been doing some weights and hot yoga and stuff like that. I was doing the hot yoga before I did the run, and that helped me a ton. I love those workouts. I think a hot yoga class is actually harder than running a marathon. I certainly sweat more, but that helped with the flexibility, with the kind of the mental side of it before and after too, I think, as well.
Sure. Well, and if you have time before you fly out, Power Life Yoga is one of our clients, and they're really big here. We're having Adam Genezer on the podcast tomorrow. He's the owner of Power Life. So
awesome.
Definitely recommend them. I've been in a lot of the classes filming, And I've never actually taken a class. My wife goes and she loves it. So
you gotta try it. I go to this place called Fahrenheit Yoga in Nashville, and they've got a little podcast, and they had me on it, and it's one of the male instructors, and we're just talking. When I first started doing it like 3 years ago, you go in these classes and there's like, let's say there's 50 people in there,
49 women.
There's yeah, exactly.
And some old dude that's 70 that's like, what am I doing?
Exactly. And that dynamic is starting to change. It's maybe 30 or 40% men now. And,
wow.
People who are athletes, but, all kind of ages and interests and, athletes. And it's been really cool to see, more guys being involved with it and showing up to the classes and, getting involved with hot yoga. I just love it.
When I was joking with my buddies, when I'd be filming them all, I'm like, because my wife and I have been together for 13 years now,
awesome.
since high school. And thank you. And I'm always like, dude, if you're looking for a woman, you're looking for a girlfriend, like go to freaking yoga. Like you'll find some very, very in shape and very attractive women there. And they're just like, oh yeah, whatever. I'm like, you got to suck up your pride though, and you got to go. But I think if the tides are turning though, it's a cool offering though for fitness, because most guys just lift weights or whatever. But it's like it's the little movements that you think would be easy, and then you take a class, you're like, holy cow, like this is really hard,
Yeah, I mean, it sure is. And yeah, I mean, and it doesn't have that like competitive kind of like macho thing like lifting weights does. And I mean, at this point in my life, I want to look okay and I want to feel good. And, run, lift weights, but I don't think that you get more bang for your buck in an hour than what you would get in a hot yoga class, at least for me.
Sure.
And then they get the one I go to, they've got these cold towels. They put this lavender stuff on there, and you lay down, and once you get done, you're like laying in a puddle of your own sweat, and they come by and they put that thing on your face. I told the guy on that other podcast, I said, man, once they did that, I was like, take my credit card.
Right. I'm never leaving. Yeah. I'll be in Shavasana the rest of the week here, be hanging out. That's super cool. So I guess more of the tactical stuff, we haven't really even talked about some of the content of what you share with people, but if you could give like 3 tips, if someone's listening that they are a teenager or college student, what's like 3 tips for students or the people in that age to help avoid or deal with kind of this chronic online issue that's going on right now?
Yeah, I encourage the kids especially to think about the amount of time they're spending on there, because I mean that really has a lot of impact with the mental health and just the different the opportunities for them to be exposed to inappropriate things. I encourage them to think about it like longer term, right? So, some of these kids are spending 8 hours a day on social media. And so if you're a high school kid and you live to like average life expectancy, that works out to like 20 years of your life that you're going to spend on social media apps. And when you say it to them like that, you're like, look, you're 15 years old. You live to be 75. You got 60 years left. You're going to spend 20 of those years on Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok. Like, is that really how you want to spend your life? And just putting that context around it, I think, is very important, because it's like, okay, dude, 8 hours today, 8 hours, like whatever. But those hours become days and weeks and months and years. And like, you only get one chance here. You only get to do this once. So, just kind of approaching it from a little bit different way. I mean, I don't think I say anything that's like revolutionary, but I come at it from different angles. And, I tell them, look, like I ran across the country, and the average teenager spends about 4.8 hours a day on social media. I said, it took me about 4.5 hours a day to run these marathons every day. So telling them, but also showing them, I think is super important. I encourage these kids to like, it sounds cliche, but like to be the change. It's like, look, the younger generation hasn't been shown the right way to handle technology, right? Their parents are often just as addicted, if not more, to these devices. We're like surprised that these kids bully one another, but they've seen athletes, celebrities, politicians doing the same thing. That's what they grew up watching. And the adults are doing it on Twitter, X, and Facebook, and the kids are doing it on Snapchat and TikTok. That's the only difference. But in like what world would a kid not emulate the behavior of what should be their role models? And I just tell them that openly. Like, you haven't been shown the right way to do this. It's going to be up to your generation to be the change and to, frankly, do it differently than previous generations have. So it's the time. It's that. I really encourage them to not sleep with the phone next to them or completely out of the room is best. A lot of these stories, I've had thousands of these stories come to me of like the most awful outcomes. And I asked 2 questions. What happened? When did it happen? No matter what the answer to the what question is, about 80% of the time, the when is at night after the parents have gone to sleep. That's when a child or a teenager is most vulnerable, right? That's when they send an inappropriate picture. That's when they fall victim to one of these online predators, right? The kids in their room with their phone, doors closed, their parents are asleep. They want attention. That predator's happy to give it to them. Mm-hmm. That's when a kid can't sleep, a teenager, and sees that drug dealer on Snapchat selling his Xanax and buys it, and he doesn't get a Xanax, he gets a counterfeit fentanyl pill. That's when they access pornography, right? So that's one thing, both, I encourage the parents especially keep it out of their rooms. But if, most parents aren't doing that, so I encourage the kids, like, do it yourself, or at least keep it across the room, not right next to your bed. Because, we've all done that, right? You scroll on the thing and you look over. It's like, my God, it's midnight. When did I even lay down? And then you wake up in the morning, I'm going to turn my alarm off. And next thing you know, you scrolled Instagram for 15 minutes, right? So I encourage them, no phone for 30 minutes before bed, and ideally for 30 minutes in the morning. And honestly, that's one I struggle with too. It's like, especially as a business owner, it's like you check your emails and see what fire you got to put out today, or what thing needs your attention. But I think I acknowledge too, like, I'm not perfect. Like, I have days where my screen time is too high. If I am on an airplane and there's no Wi-Fi, like, I lose my mind sometimes, And so I think it's acknowledging, like, I don't have all the answers. Mm-hmm. We're all figuring this stuff out together. So that's kind of a long answer, but that'd be my 3 kind of practical tips.
No, I think that's super, super helpful to know too, and just knowing statistically, like, when they're most vulnerable. I was watching a TikTok from an aunt who was watching a daughter, or her niece, and parents were out of town, and she was like overly, like, she was going to a friend's house, but she knows statistically when a big group of friends get together about that age group, like, that's when most things happen. And they had, long story short, put a bunch of like kind of safeguards in place to check in with their niece, and then things ended up going awry where the parents had a hidden camera in the room and were asking the girls to change, and some weird things were happening, and she called her aunt and got him out of there, and they've solved the problem and fixed it, and now they're pressing charges, doing the whole thing. But it's like things like that with technology that you don't beforehand, people wouldn't even think about predators online, or that they can easily access. If everyone's texting at the dinner table as a family, some pretender, some predator could be posing as a friend to your child, messaging them, and you don't even know.
Well, they sure do. And there's 500,000, according to the FBI, there's 500,000 of these online predators active every single day. So parents ask me every day, okay, all right, well, I came here, I listened to your shit for an hour and a half. Like, all I really want to know is, like, what age should I give my kid a phone? And what I would say to them is, look, when you're ready for your parent or your child, to not just be exposed to the handful of dangerous people in your neighborhood or in your community, and you're ready for 500,000 of those people all over the world to potentially have access to your child and your child to them, that's when you should give your kid a phone, because that's what you're doing. That's the door that you're opening the second you hand them a smartphone or social media.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And the fact that, like you said, a lot of these, I think earlier off air, we were talking about this, of like the amount of parents that are putting their kids in dangerous situations that don't even realize it, because they just assume the world's rainbows and unicorns, and it's not like the dangerous place it is. But it's like, I see this a lot, especially with like families go on vacation and like go to the beach, and they put up pictures with like their early, like preteen daughter, and it's like in a bikini. And I'm like, yes, that's like fine, whatever. But I'm like, what do you realize when you put that on the internet? Like, there's predators everywhere that are going to take that image and do God knows what with it.
For sure.
Or try to target her or whatever.
For sure. And now with AI, I mean, it used to be these predators would get these nude images and then extort these kids, and I can share stories about that. But now with AI, you can actually take a photo off of an Instagram. Like we've had, for example, these predators using the school's public-facing Facebook and Instagram pages, taking a face of one of their students, using AI to generate a nude image, and then turning around and extorting that kid with that AI generated generated image, right? It's not like, back in the day, they've always done this, but it would be like they would do like clip art on this face, on this body, and anybody would say, it's not real. Well, AI, these images that they're creating are much more realistic, and they're, months away from being able to do that in video form. Use that photo and create an AI generated inappropriate video. And so, these predators, they do what's called sextortion. And, believe it or not, it actually happens more to boys than to girls. And the scheme with the boys is they basically create these accounts. They act like they're a teenage girl. They contact these boys, try to get these boys to send an inappropriate picture. If they do, they then start blackmailing them for money. They say, I have this nude photo of you. And so if you don't pay this sum of money, we're going to send this picture to your friends, your teachers. They'll screenshot their followers. We know who your mom is. They'll tell these kids we're going to ruin your life. It's awful. And so when I was running across the country, 2 of the families I honored had lost children both the same way. They fell victim to one of these predators, and then they took their own lives, not knowing, what to do or how to talk to an adult about it, or, not seeing a path forward. And the young man from Missouri, his name was Evan Bettler. He was 16 years old. It was 2 hours from the very first message he ever received to him taking his own life in his small town in Missouri. 2 hours from the first message. Another young man, his name was David Gonzalez. My run through Utah was in honor of him. Was 5 hours. Think about that. Like, it just happened so quickly in both of those scenarios. And, a lot of times, Snapchat, all these apps know this stuff is happening and they're not doing anything about it. Tens of thousands of reports of this, and often nothing's done about it.
Sure. No, and it's just crazy where the world's going. I'm more attuned to it than a lot of people probably are, just because, even when I first got on Snapchat and I saw they had the map feature,
Yep.
I'm like, the default setting is that it's on. Like, if you're friends with me on Snapchat, which anyone can add me on Snapchat, you can see where I'm at
this
all
is crazy,
times
dude.
of the day.
I don't know if we can put this on camera or not.
Yeah, if you're watching or listening, like, go to your Snapchat and turn on ghost mode so people cannot
100%.
see where you are. Because
look at this. This was Friday. I was speaking in this town in Southern Illinois. This is a public high school.
Here, I'll hold it up to the camera here so you can see. See if we can focus. So that's we go ahead.
So that's a high school kid's snap map, which is location sharing down to a given street address, right? Click on any one of those kids, it will give driving and walking directions to exactly where they are in real time. And so he had 4,000 Snapchat friends. He was from a town of like 4,000 people in this whole town. And this is like a junior or senior in high school. He came up and showed it to me. You can't even see the state lines because he has so many friends on there. And this is, he doesn't know any of these people. He knows maybe a couple of these people in his hometown. So he came up after my talk and he's like, dude, I hadn't really thought about how dangerous this is. I turned my Snapchat, I turned my Snap Map on. I turned on, they call it the ghost mode. He's like, I turned that on now. But he's like, yeah, I've got 4,000 friends and they can all see my location. And I was like, how many of their locations can you see? And he showed the map and he's like, almost all of them.
It's terrifying. And it sounds so creepy though, because I'll open mine and I grew up 3 hours away from here. So it's interesting to see like 3 people that I'm friends with live in Des Moines. Everyone else is in Southeast Iowa or whatever, or wherever they live in the country. But the most practical way I used it was I had a friend of mine who lives nearby and I didn't have her address for like a wedding invite or a baby shower thing. So I literally pulled it up. I knew she had her location on. I zoomed in on her house at like 8 p.m. and I'm like, oh, that's where she lives. And I got her address and she never even asked about it. I was just like, the most PG way to do that or use it. But can you imagine one, just knowing where people live? You could probably find people cheating on their spouse really easily in that situation, or doing anything that their location tracking is open to the public.
Right.
Who at Snapchat thought this was a good idea? What's the practical application other than nefarious reasons?
Well, I think it's with all of this stuff, right? The most addictive parts of this are also the most dangerous. And so I think it's important that everyone remember these are businesses. They're competing to capture and keep our attention. And so, that does that, right? Looking at where your friends are all the time, doing the snap streak, so they do it every day, and having the highest snap score, which is essentially a popularity contest, right? So I think it all plays into that like dopamine hit of, let's see where my friends are. And then the other side of that is, where they are, you see what they're doing. But if you see 4 of your friends all at one house and you weren't invited, then you're feeling left out. Whereas when we were growing up, you might hear about it the next day at school, but you're not like watching it in real time while you're sitting at home watching TV and everybody's hanging out without you, right? And so I would say it's literally like a race to the bottom in terms of the most addictive features are also the most dangerous, right? So you think like Instagram, like if you had to say like, okay, of the popular ones, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, those are like the big 3 with teenagers. Instagram, I would say is like the least bad. And so, but what Instagram did is they added the Instagram Reels, the short form videos similar to TikTok, and they introduced the vanish mode, which is disappearing messages, pictures, and videos similar to Snapchat, because they were losing attention and thus market share to TikTok and Snapchat.
Meta's the king of just stealing features from other.
Just steal it.
Stealing features from popular sites because they can't come up with anything original besides the original Facebook. So
you got it. You got it. So these apps have all become very similar. I mean, they're by similar, I mean, it's like you take the most addictive, dangerous part and put it into your own app.
Yeah. Well, even like Snapchat, they're like the stories, that's Instagram stories now. They stole that kind of feature, but now they have like a short form news feed that's really, they're trying to push that heavily to compete with everyone, But yeah, it's kind of a wild world. And I see it from a different lens because I'd use it for business. We help clients with their marketing, but I had to put, just for my own, the things I've done to try to help control it is I have an hour limit on my TikTok account every day that it locks me out after 60 minutes. And Ben, when I tell you the amount of days that I've had that lock screen come up at like 10 a.m. and I'm like, oh my God, like I've already been on this one app only for an hour.
Right.
And I'm 30 and like, and I got 2 kids and a wife and I got a business I got to run. I'm like, the amount of times that kids probably are like at 3 hours before noon, like every day or on the weekends or whatever, it's like, oh my God. And then if you're constantly getting that dopamine hit and you don't go do anything in your real life, it's no wonder you don't have any friends because it's all like they're not real friends, It's this like constant world of just like fake. It's not even a real thing. It's not like a real thing. It's just like, well, I've got 10,000 followers on Instagram. It's like you haven't left your house in like 3 days. Like it's a really weird world to live in,
Right. You have 10,000 people following you on Instagram and you don't have one friend in real life. And it's actually very sad, you know? And then even if they were to go out and try and make a friend, they don't know how to talk to anybody because they've spent their whole life on their phone. And then, heaven forbid they live in one of these states that, and this is a aside and probably a rant, but decided to lock these kids in their houses and send them to school for 2 years on iPads and Chromebooks, setting them back in addition to whatever they're already doing on their personal phones and devices. And so, we saw a lot with that in the states that really went hard on the shutdown, the impact that had, both with social media dangers, but, in the screen time addiction and all those different things. And, schools are trying to walk it back, some of this stuff and remove these devices. For example, Governor Reynolds here in Iowa has proposed a statewide phone ban during the school day, so kids aren't able to spend time during school hours. I saw a study recently, and I don't remember who it was from, but it said that teenagers average an hour and a half of screen time of social media time during the school day. So, they're at school for 8 hours a day and there's an hour and a half of that is still on their phone.
Sure. Well, and it's the world you just can't avoid. And I think talking about legislation and changes, I think that's probably a lot what the parents ask and the legislator and the educators when you come to speak with them. Do you think something like what Reynolds is proposing is over the top? Is it not enough? Like where do you stand in some of those things in terms of the stories you've heard and how you think it could make the biggest impact in terms of change?
Well, I think it's all a little bit nuanced. I think there's no one prescription here, right? It's the students taking responsibility. It's the schools having policies in place, bringing in speakers, curriculum. It's the parents, and it is the companies doing some things, and it is the politicians, legislators. No one constituency can do it on their own. It's everybody working together in the best interest of children, and in the best interest of children is having these phones in front of their face as little as possible, especially with social media. I think what Governor Reynolds is doing is a great thing. You get, with things like this, you get about 80% of parents, I would say, just anecdotally from what I hear, would support that, which 80% on anything is a win. And then you get about 10% of parents who really don't care. And then you get about 10% of parents who are very against it. And those are the parents that are very loud. And those are the parents that are on social media. And those are the parents that are trying to talk to their, the media and TV and saying this is bad for this, that, and the other reason.
Those are probably the same parents that don't realize their kid's about to take their own life because they're being chronically bullied. And they're on their phone complaining about it on Facebook while there are other kids in the room getting solicited by a sex predator. Like, I feel like those are similar, not to say it's all in one bucket, but it's like, I feel like people don't realize like how critically terrible this situation will get if something's not done,
For sure. Yeah. And look, so the biggest pushback is two things. One, I need to know when to pick my kid up from school. And what if there's an active shooter situation and, they can't contact 911? Now, a lot of the experts would actually say it's the opposite because it overloads the phone lines going into 911. And also their teacher has been trained on active shooter. And so if everybody goes to their phone, that means they're not listening to their teacher. And they're also likely making noise, telling the perpetrator of this where they are. And so, a lot of the expert, the folks who do the active shooter training would say it still is best to not have the phones in the classroom. So because their teacher has been, or should have been trained on this. So, yeah. And I'm very sensitive to that. We had a school shooting in Nashville just a month ago. We had one. I don't know, almost 2 years ago now at this Covenant Christian school where 6 people were killed.
There was one, Perry is right.
I remember that.
15 minutes down the road from here.
I remember that.
Principal got shot, and I want to say 1 or 2 other students died as well. So that was like just a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy.
Well, Iowa, that's awful. I mean, even one kid dying from anything is too many kids dying. Iowa has done a good job. I think the governor put like $100 million into their school safety program. They have an app for reporting this stuff. I think they do a good job. And again, the thing in Perry, I think, happened after that program was in place. So it's not perfect by any means, but at least they are doing some things here in Iowa. I met a couple years ago when I was here with the director of that, and I think it's a new person now, but the director of that school safety bureau, he's a very sharp guy. He's very passionate about it, and he had very specific instructions from Governor Reynolds. And so I think that's a great thing. And look, I'm like a single issue person at this point, right? Some people have guns are their issue or abortion's their issue, and this has become my issue. And so I'll advocate to Republicans and to Democrats. And if one does something great, I'll say that. And if they don't, I'll also say that. Mm-hmm. I've tried to avoid the politics and government, but I've just kind of naturally got brought back into it. And but it's just so hard because these companies spend so much money lobbying. So the big tech companies spent $90 million lobbying just members of Congress. That doesn't even count your local state legislators, right? So they've got one lobbyist for every 4 members. So that's a very tough fight to fight. And even if a piece of legislation does pass, they have this front group, this trade organization, it's called Net Choice. They come in and they file a lawsuit every single time. So best case scenario is it gets dragged out in court for 2, 3, 4 years. And if it does ever actually take effect, it's usually outdated, right? It's the issue of that, there's worse issues or different issues. So that's where the legislation side is really tough. And I try on that front, but I know that I can go into a school every day and make a difference for kids and parents and teachers. And I just don't feel that I can walk into a a state senator, state representative, or Congress or U.S. Senate and have that same impact.
Sure. Well, it's such a pressing issue right now, and there's just so much that goes into, like, one, the companies, but the state laws, the usage. I am seeing this new resurgence, though, like, because we shoot a lot of videos with, like, high school sports teams, colleges. The amount of the youth that are not on social media and they make that choice is rising a lot more. Where people that don't post anything, they have an account, but they're not even on it. It's just not, it's like, I don't want any part of that. It's interesting to me because I always assume anyone younger than me is like you said, they're on their phone at least 6 hours a day or whatever. So I think there is this like resurgence that's coming where it's like the anti-social media wave of people that just want to like live life and not be chronically online, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of it is the kids who are like naturally contrarians, you know, where whatever it is, they want to do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. Those are the kids that I usually run into. And it just so happens with this, doing the opposite of what everybody else is doing is a great decision.
Sure. No, it totally makes sense. Well, and I even think living in Iowa, we're like just outside of the metro, like we always thought we were kind of insulated from any of this stuff. And then Perry happened months ago and we're like, my wife and I were just like, holy cow, like, you know, you think it's a great place to raise kids and everything, but it just shows it's not the location. It's a serious systemic issue of like mental health issues in the country. So
for sure. And, you know, on the issue of gun violence in schools specifically, again, one child dying from anything, I just want to reiterate, is too many. But the attention that the school shootings get compared to social media harms is so much more, right? And so, you know, last year, I think there were less than 20 children in America that were killed in school shootings. And again, one is too many. But if you look at stats in terms of like what's getting attention, it's that. And, you know, I agree with a lot of those things. But there were 22 children, high school kids a week that died from fentanyl. Primarily, they're getting it through social media. I mean, that works out to like 1,150 kids just last year from fentanyl. The social media choking challenge, 1,300 kids have died just from that. Then you bring in the suicides as a result of Preditors and the cyberbullying. And I don't know whether it's 100 to 1 or if it's 50 to 1 or if it's 10 to 1. I would venture to say it's more than 10 to 1 chances that a child would die from a social media harm than a school shooting. And I would actually say it's probably more like 50 to 1, 100 to 1, something like that.
Right.
And so I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about that, but let's just make sure that we're talking about these other things too, with some context and perspective, because it's like, you know, let's save every child's life. And so it is frustrating to me that sometimes these internet-related issues don't get the attention maybe that they probably deserve.
Now that you've traveled the country and talked to so many schools and things, has it changed your perspective on if you even want kids in your life, and if you do, how that's going to change how you would be a parent in the future?
Yeah, it has. I always thought I wanted kids. I still think I do, but I'm not as set on it, to be totally honest with you. It really does break my heart, the things that I hear from these kids every single day. And, you know, it's like you can do everything as right as a parent and still end up with one of these horrible outcomes. You know, I met all these parents who've lost children with the run. I mean, they came out and ran with me. They took me, you know, they went to dinner with us. They took me in their child's bedroom. And as I was thinking afterwards, I'm like, what's the common theme with all these stories? And the only one that I could come up with, as scary as this is they're all great parents. They're all great kids who made one single mistake or, you know, did something that they didn't know could actually harm them. And that's the scariest thing, is you can do everything right. You can have every conversation you know to have, but this stuff changes so rapidly, it happens so quick that you could still end up with a horrible outcome, right? Like the kid from Missouri I told you about with the sextortion who took his own life. His parents are both public school teachers. They knew, they had every conversation. They were hearing the things that were happening. They'd never heard of sextortion, and if they had, they would have had the conversation. And so that's where it's that's where it's really scary. And that's where that was part of the purpose of the run. Let's get these messages out there. Whatever platform I have, let's use that to share these families who are willing to share their stories. Because for every Bettler family or Minor family who's a young man who died from a choking challenge and Didier family who died from fentanyl, there's 100, if not 1,000 of those stories out there that aren't being told for various different reasons. So let's share the ones that are willing to, to go out there courageously sharing their story. And, I think courage is contagious. And so that is encouraging other parents to do the same things to get that message out there. Sure.
No, and I think it's really honorable what you're doing. And the reflection piece I think is huge because there is no perfect answer, like how this influences your decisions in life, where like if you want to have a family or not, and if you do, how you'll raise them or not, like all these things just kind of evolve. And I think it's insane how many parents are underselling how much of an impact this has on the youth and the future generations. Like it affects everyone, Yeah, and
it's so interesting, right? Like I'm gonna leave here. I'm gonna go do a talk at a school. If we get 100 parents there tonight, like I'd be happy with that. If I had to guess, it'd probably be based on the what the school told me ahead of time. And this is nothing, a knock on the school by any means, but I'm guessing there's going to be 50 to 75 parents there. And if this was a conversation tonight, not about social media content, but about library content, all of the parents, this is a private school, all the parents would be there.
Yeah.
But, and this isn't like meant to be a political thing, and like I'm not in the business of telling people what their values should be, but kids aren't, whatever it is you don't want your kid exposed to. It's not happening in one line, in one book, in one school library that no kid's ever been to. It's that 4.8 hours a day they're spending on social media, right? If you take any kid, you pick the kid, any kid in any middle school or high school in America, and just say, hey, we're going to go on TikTok. We're going to print their feed off, their TikTok feed, and we're going to bind it up and put it in the school library. Parents would lose their minds. But it's easier to go yell at a school board meeting than it is to be reflective and look yourself in the mirror and think, actually, realize where the kid is being exposed to those things you don't want them exposed to is actually in your own home on a device that you purchase for your own child.
Right. Because then people have to reflect and be like, I'm a part of this too, but you can also be the solution too.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much that comes with it. There's the PG version of it of like, how do you lower your screen time? Like you said, leaving your phone away from there, like putting locks on the apps and whatever. But then there's the dark side where it's, like you said, these sextortion schemes, the scammers, once your kids get a little older and there's like the opposite sex is soliciting your kid for sexual images, videos, whatever, take them, send them to the whole school. Like there was stuff like that happened at my high school, and I graduated in 2013,
right?
Where everyone, like, it's like on a movie, everyone gets the mass text of the pretty girl in school that like the nude she sent to her boyfriend that then sent it to the entire school. It's like, This stuff is evolving so much faster than people can keep up with it. But I think the conversations have to be had like as early as possible and as often as possible, but also like, especially in the cases of the people you're running for, like knowing that you're a safe place for your kid to come to, even if they made a mistake and sent a video they weren't supposed to, or were talking to somebody they probably shouldn't have been, like to know that you're the first person they should come to and not feel like they have no other choice,
Yeah. I mean, I think and I tell parents this, what these kids need to hear is you can come talk to us about anything, right? No matter how awkward, no matter how uncomfortable. Because if you think about it from the kid's perspective, how hard is it to go to your mom and say, I sent a nude photo that's now being passed around my school? And they're addicted to their phone. And so they don't want to have that iPhone or Snapchat or TikTok taken away. But so many of these kids, they don't know who to go to. I mean, these kids come up to me after my talks all the time, almost every day, and say, I've never told anybody this before. And then they tell me the most heartbreaking thing. And then I, of course, get involved and get them the help and law enforcement and all these different things. But some of their parents have no clue that this stuff is happening. Like I was doing a talk in Texas last year, and I was speaking to the parents the night before and the kids the next morning. And so I put up this slide that said something about sextortion. That's what the example was with that young man from Missouri. And so I don't use that specific language with kids, but I tell them, like, kind of give them a story of what that is like. So anyway, I put the sextortion slide up. This mom in the back, she's jumping up and down. And I'm looking at her like, do I call on her or do I just like wait for her to blurt it out? Mm-hmm. So I call on her. She's like, listen, make sure you don't use that word sextortion with the kids tomorrow. We have not had that conversation in my home. This makes me very uncomfortable. Okay. But I said, ma'am, I didn't buy your child a smartphone. You did that. It's not my first rodeo. It will be age appropriate. So the next morning I speak to the children. I say the same thing I do in every presentation, which is if you've been exposed to something, come up and talk to me afterwards. I can help you. The little girl comes up, bawling her eyes out. I'm 10. First got a phone when I was 7, got Snapchat, got Instagram. Last year when I was 9, got TikTok. Same grown man has been sending me inappropriate pictures and videos of himself for that entire 3 years. I've tried to block him. I've tried to delete him. He forces me to take inappropriate pictures and videos of myself, send back to him. Never told anybody this before. I really hope you can help me. And thankfully I was able to, and they found the guy who's going to jail. But then this little...
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've been able to help a lot of families with those things, and I'm very grateful to have been able to do that. And I think it's important. I've never made a dime on any of that, but when it's your job to talk about this stuff, if somebody comes to you in a time of need or hardship, you should help them. That's my view on it. But anyway, this girl walked away, and the principal was standing behind me, and she's like, remember that mom that was losing her shit in the back last night? That little girl's her daughter.
Oh my God. That's the type of stuff I'm talking about.
She was worried about me using the word. That exact thing had been happening in her home for 3 years. And her daughter thought not to go to her mother, but to go to a random guy who showed up at her school for an hour.
That's insane. I feel like I could see that happening a lot more frequently than people realize. They're afraid they're saying the term is going to somehow mess their kids up, even though the term has been messing their kids up for years already. It's just putting a name on it.
Yeah.
So that's insane.
Yeah. And, I often struggle with, well, you don't want to introduce a kid to something that they don't already know about, right? Like, I don't think it's my place. But at the same time, I can leave a school, and if a parent's pissed off at me because I talked about sextortion, even if I don't use that word, whatever, I'm very comfortable with my content because I ask them at the beginning, how many of you have access to this technology? And most of them raised their hand. And again, I didn't give them a phone. Their parents did that, right? So that's where it's really tough. Is it's like you don't want to introduce them to new things, but also I can leave a school, and if a parent's pissed off at me, I don't care. What I can't do is go in front of children and know that someone in this room is either being exposed to one of these things or is likely to be, and not tell them about the dangers. Like, the worst thing for me is some school calls me afterward and said, one of our students took their own life because they were sextorted or they were bullied or what have you. Like, I can't live with that. I can live with a pissed off parent. I don't care.
Sure. No, that's a crazy perspective, and something that, again, just people are focused on the wrong things. It's the big picture. It's the having the confidence to come to mom or dad or both or teacher or coach, whoever, and like, I'm in a tough spot, please help me, and not feel like they have no options, nowhere to turn, But I also think, especially as we raise our kids, like, putting a huge priority on just like living life in the real world. And it's okay to like unplug and not use your phone for a whole day. Like, put your phone away. Someone's got a phone if we need to call a tow truck or something, or somebody breaks your leg, we got to call an ambulance. Like, just sit and be a human and talk to people and just enjoy sunlight and fresh air and stuff like that. I think it's something that people are kind of forgetting, and myself included. Like, just need to take more time to be present and really make a time for people, Yeah,
no doubt.
Absolutely.
Agree completely.
Well, Ben,
it's so interesting. Just as kind of like a final thought,
sure.
Just on that point you just made is, I get so much that it feels so negative, right? Social media, and it's like hateful and divisive and all these different things. And I feel it myself, right? But then with the run, it was just so, and I already kind of thought this with meeting so many people in schools and Ubers and airports the last 7 years, but seeing the country in such an intimate way, right? I mean, literally crossing the country 26.2 miles at a time. There's no more intimate way to see the country. And so naturally, I met a lot of people, right? We're going in restaurants and dive bars, and coffee shops the whole way. And what you realize when you like get out there and meet people face to face, anywhere you go, is that most people in this country are kind and decent, and they actually love America, and they're actually not hateful and negative and disrespectful. I mean, I ran across the country in the middle of one of the most, if not the most contentious elections of all time, and had no negative interactions. And, we had a map on the side of the RV. Anybody we'd meet, we'd have sign it. And we had everyone from like the coffee shop barista who had blue hair, completely covered in tattoos, 3 nose rings. She signed it. She loved it. The Catholic priest also signed it, also loved it. Everyone was kind. Everyone was kind. And we were, driving 5 miles an hour down the side of the road, running down you would have thought there would have been a lot more negativity, and there just wasn't at all. And so that's something I've tried to incorporate into my message as someone who's seen the extremes of the worst of social media and who's lived it, and someone who's on the other extreme done this very organic, grassroots, athletic endeavor. Maybe a reason for a little bit of hope and optimism, and to your point, to consider just how much time we're spending on this technology.
Sure. Well, I think it's just a crazy journey, one for the people you've met and the places you've gone, but also just the physical effort to run and then bring this attention to something that's, whether people want to accept it or not, whether you're the parent that you mentioned that is like, this is not an issue, and then it really is, to somebody that is very aware of it and hopefully never have a negative experience. But social media has changed the world. Digital consumption methods have changed the world, but it's good and bad. Everything's good and bad. So
no doubt.
I think just especially keeping the youth in mind, be that person for someone if you're listening. Like if you have a niece, nephew, cousin, son, daughter, whatever, ask them, reach out to them, try to help them. I always say, like you said, be the change. And can't tell you how thankful I am for you to come on the show. And
well, thank you for having me, Ryan. I really appreciate it. It's a great conversation.
Sure. Well, when people hear this episode, go check out his book, watch his documentary, join his membership group. It sounds like you're doing some great stuff. So where can people find more about you and see what other stuff you have to offer?
Yeah, so the website is safesocialnetwork.com. That has the speaking information. That will be where our parent and student curriculum live. And then on social media, ironically, Ben J. Tracy on Instagram, trying to put out as much of this information as possible. I've started to do more social media myself. It did seem a little hypocritical. Like the first 5 years I did this, like, hey, this stuff's all bad. Follow me on Instagram is a strange transition. But I realized the parent I most need to reach isn't showing up in my parent presentation tonight because that parent's at home on Instagram. And so I went the complete opposite direction, which is like, all right, maybe if I run down the side of the road with my shirt off for 4 months and we document it, then maybe parents will care.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do more of that. I interviewed all these parents who've lost children. We're putting that out in long form, short form clips, all those different things. I'm doing, conversations like this to try and get this message out in a different way than has been done before. So
Sure.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you for flying in from Nashville. I know you didn't come here just for me, but I appreciate you for making the effort, and really happy that Jeremy connected us, because I do think this issue needs even more attention than we gave in the last hour and a half. But there's so much impact for parents, for students, for old, young. Like, people do not realize how much this impacts society as a whole. So I cannot thank you enough for what you're doing and the message you're spreading out there.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
Perfect. Well, if you guys made it this far in the show, you guys know what to do. Make sure to give it a big like. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube this year to reach more people with the YouTube channel. So if you haven't done that already, make sure to subscribe. Check out Ben and all the stuff he's doing. We'll put links to everything in the description box. But until next week, my name is Ryan Snod, and it rhymes with odd, and I'm out. Peace. Thank you so much for watching yet another episode of the Rhymes with Odd podcast. We really do appreciate your support. If you could give us a 5-star review on Apple iTunes, that makes a world of difference, guys. Also, if you're tuning in on YouTube or Spotify, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and check us out on social media. Also, if you'd like to inquire more about our services here at Snod Media Group or learn about doing your own podcast for your own business, you can find us at snodmedia.com. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace.